introduce you. So, welcome to Oh Brother, Not Another Podcast, an official Apple podcast. And my name is Miggs Burrows.
And I'm Trace Burrows. And I'm sure you've heard this a million times, Burt, but holy cowabunga, Miggs. You know who we have on today?
How Zoom? We're on.
We have Burt Ward from the famous, originally from the Batman and Robin television series, which I grew up on. We watched every episode, and we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about what he's been doing since, like, I think it was 94 with his Gentle Giant pet products, like food, special food made up for your dogs. And I guess some of his dogs have lived twice their lifespan due to the care that his organization has given to dogs and the food that he had created. So thanks, Burt, for coming on the show.
Well, hello, citizens.
Citizens of,
And those blurbs, those things in the background should have like pow and
well, that's what they.
Those are some of our dogs and their ages. We've been very fortunate to help animals live longer, healthier, and happier lives. That's it's our charity.
Yeah. So I'm going to get into some trivia things before we get into the real life.
Sure.
You remember talking to me on the phone 10 years ago?
Maybe not. I have to be honest. You know, crime fighters are always very precise, so I can't say that.
So I created special effects templates, and you were interested in one of my collections, and one of them had a fault in it. And you used it, so I think 10 years. So you called me, or we spoke on the phone, because you were going to point out where it didn't work. It was like a box that was floating in space, different walls. And so anyway, we talked on the phone, and I fixed it. You were correct. You found an error in it. And then I sent you the new one.
Well, that's fantastic. You know, I was a beta tester for many software programs because no matter how sophisticated the program is and how many experts they have working it and telling the company, though, it's perfect, all they have to do is give it to me. And in about 20 or 30 minutes, I'm in trouble. And I find things that they say, you know, you should have your brain analyzed. You can find things that nobody in their right mind could find the problems in computer software. And so it's only because I'm like, the way I approach it is through every combination of things to try to get through to solve things.
So you were all your accomplishment. You were a chess player, so you think you just have an analytical mind?
Very. I placed when I was at UCLA. I placed in the top 3% of the country in math and science. And when I left to do Batman, the dean came to me and complained that I should have stayed at the university and became a nuclear physicist.
Wow,
but I think I prefer acting better.
Did you? Yeah. Well, you certainly.
You're still doing stuff. You're doing a lot of. You do live action, but a lot of voices on animation.
I've done of course, the biggest thing I did is Batman, but I've done 40 features for television and lots of voiceover, all kinds of television show voiceovers and things like that. No, can I tell you, it's been an amazing, fantastic, wonderful career that like anything else, you know, you have moments that you're up and moments you're down. But, you know, it's life. And I tell everybody, the first 100 years are the hardest after we're sailing.
Exactly. You only go backwards like Benjamin. What's that movie?
Benjamin Button, right. What I want to know is, this amazing formula, we'll go back and forth, but with these Gentle Giant pet products, the longevity, can any of that apply to you? What is the magical ingredient? Well, you don't have to tell if it's a secret. Don't tell us.
No, it's not a secret. It's all about science. And what we've done with animals, it's our charity. My wife and I own the company. We don't take any salary from this. I mean, this is not about money. This is about helping animals, especially dogs and cats that are our pets that we all love so much, helping them live long, healthy, happy lives. And we have our dogs are living up to 27 and a half years. Wow. Our cats, 2 years ago, we lost 2 cats. One was 31, the other was 32 years of age.
Unbelievable.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's actually very easy to explain how we do it. And people that follow our feeding and care program. And in other words, when you care for animals, it's not just the food. It is a combination of 3 things. 1, how you care for your pet. 2, how you feed them. Okay. And 3, what you feed them. And, it's one of those things like I give the analogy of one of these combination locks where, you got to turn it to the left to a certain number, then back to the right, and then back to the left. And if you don't get the numbers right, it doesn't open. And so it's sort of like that. If you follow what we've done, and I tell people we blazed a path through the forest. And, if you follow our path, you should get the same results that we are. We actually have almost 80% of our dogs living twice their normal lifespan, 80%. But then we have those that are living into their late 20s. And one of our dogs lived to 27 and a half, and her normal average lifespan was 7 to 8 years. So she lived 4 times her normal lifespan. And the other thing is, it's not just longevity, it's a quality of life. Our animals here, and we always have about 50 in our house for the last 28 years, 50 dogs. And these are not little ones. We have a few little ones, but we have the really giant dogs. Dogs
running around and everything?
Yeah, through our entire house. If you go to our website, the first thing you'll see at gentlegiantsdogfood.com is my wife, Tracy, and I in bed with 50 of them. It's a minute video. And when you see a video before you start playing, it looks like a still image. And I have people tell me, oh, you composited, you did Photoshop this. I said, really? So you see that button that says press to play? Just hit that play button. All of a sudden they go, oh my gosh, it's a real thing. I can't believe it. 50 giant dogs. We have dogs here that are so big. One of our dogs stands on his hind legs, 7 feet, 5.5 inches tall. He's 4 inches taller than Shaquille O'Neal, and he weighs 285 pounds.
Is it a wolfhound? What kind of dog?
Great Dane.
Great Dane.
Great Dane, yeah. And our English Mastiffs are up to 300 pounds. I mean, I'll be honest with you, most people have never even seen a 200-pound dog, much less a 300-pound dog. And to give you an idea how big this one dog is, when he stands on all fours, just like a regular dog on all fours, the lowest part of his back is 5.5 inches higher than your kitchen counter. Sure. That'll give you, because kitchen counters are 40 inches tall. He's 45.5 inches at the lowest part of his back.
He's like a pony. He
leans down and drinks he leans down to drink from the faucet. The faucet.
You don't have any problems with not reaching the dog potty bathroom?
Oh no, that is the most serious problem in our house. Oh, they're not the dogs. They're perfectly house trained. The biggest problem I have is in the middle of the night getting to the bathroom without tripping and breaking your neck. Because these dogs are so big, you don't just move them. I mean, they're like blocks of cement, and you kind of hold onto the wall and kind of find a little foothold to get your feet into it. I mean, it takes about 3 or 4 minutes just to get to the bathroom and get back.
What is the biggest breed of dog?
Great Dane. Great Dane. The English Mastiff, English Wolf, Irish Wolfhound is supposedly bigger, but we've had really giant. It's just like people. You can have small people, medium, tall, but then there are giants. Like, we have basketball players that are giant, tall. And you can have, and these Great Danes are absolutely amazing. But the thing is, what's so interesting is the bigger they are, the more gentle they are. I could take 2 of my biggest dogs and hold their collars with my pinky fingers on both sides, and completely, they are so docile. You just move them around with your pinky finger. You don't have to even grab with your hand. And that's why they call them gentle giants.
No, it's not. Now, does any of this apply? And people are probably going to, hopefully, like I'm thinking, is any of this, I don't know if it's technology, this approach apply to humans for longevity?
Well, yes, it does, actually. And let me tell you where it is. The 2 big things we do that other people don't do, the other pet food companies don't do this, because it's more about money for them. For us, it's not about money at all. We don't take a salary. So You know, the interest is in the animal and in the health and longevity. So we do two things that other people don't do. Number one, if any of your viewers or listeners have a dog, for example, here's a little thing you can test. Go pick up 3 or 4 kibbles of the food that you're feeding your dog, whatever it is. Doesn't matter if it's the most inexpensive grocery store food or the most expensive pet store food. They all do it. Take a 3 or 4 kibbles, rub them in your fingers, and then put the kibbles down and rub your fingers together, and you're going to feel that slightly greasy feeling.
Yeah.
And that's because they coat the food with animal fat. All right? They coat the food with animal fat. So you say, well, why would they do that? What benefit to the dog? Well, a pet food company would tell you, oh, it's for palatability, to make it tastier. Yeah. Okay? It's not about that. What it does, animal fat that coats food and is filling food. It's not just on the outside. They put lots of it on the inside too. But this animal fat confuses an animal's brain to believe it's always hungry. And guess what? The more it eats, the more you buy. And you know, you ask about kind of like a human correlation. Let me give you the human correlation. 10 years ago, a man named Morgan Spurlock went into a McDonald's in Ohio.
I saw the movie.
Every meal, had breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and a snack. For a month, he gained 55 pounds. He almost died. And they made a movie about him called Super Size Me, right? That is exactly the same principle. Fat content gives you what we call empty calories, very little nutrition, but it confuses your brain to believe you're always hungry. And what dog food company wouldn't like people buying them a third more food? And that's how much it affects them. But what it also does for dogs, it clogs their arteries. It clogs their intestines. And I like to use the example. I say, hey, listen, would you ever think of taking a can of bacon grease and pour it down your garbage disposal? Oh, of course not. Well, why wouldn't you do that? Well, it would clog it up. And if I let it sit there and it hardened, it's like cement, I'd have to replace the pipes in my sink. I said, that's exactly right. So why, when you understand that animal fat will ruin metal pipes, why would you ever feed an animal a food that every single kibble is encapsulated in animal fat, plus the inside was filled with animal fat? Why would, and they say, well, I don't know. I never thought of that, right? So that's one thing. And what happens with our dogs, because we don't do this, and I'll tell you something amazing about life. In the case of animals, particularly dogs and cats, their bodies will reject the fat clogging their arteries and intestines. It takes about a month to do it. But the difference between our food and all the other companies' foods is that they put the fat right back into the arteries and intestines. We don't put it back in. If you felt Gentle Giant's dog food in your fingers, it's so bone dry that if you rub the kibbles together, you can make a powder of it. So we don't do that. That's a really big thing. But there's something else that's gigantic. And the other gigantic thing is all about genetically modified organisms in our food supply. As I understand it, 98% of our food supply in the U.S. has been genetically modified, meaning that, for an example, a farmer that grows rice. Well, traditionally, if he grew rice, there's going to be pests that will attack the plant. Then he sprays a pesticide and, a lot of the plants could die. But now, with the addition of Roundup that is now mixed into the genes of the plant, when they grow the rice and they spray the pesticide to kill the pests, it doesn't kill the plant. The plant lives, the rice is produced, but the rice absorbs the pesticide. And there's a wonderful video on our website that we took from a site that does research on genetically modified organisms in humans, what it does to human bodies and what it does to animal bodies. And why we put this 8-minute video on is because in this particular video, everyone being interviewed are veterinarians, some of the most prestigious veterinarians in the US and the UK. And here's what just about every single vet says, and that is this: 10, 15, 20 years ago, they would see one patient, dog or cat, a month that had cancer. Now, with the genetically modified organisms in the food supply, every single day, 1 out of every 2 patients has cancer. It's killing them. It's killing them, So we have no GMOs in our food. And let me tell you something, what a job that is. I mean, when you can only find the 2% in the United States that has no GMOs and get them certified to have no GMOs. And then when you look in the back of the bag of the ingredients, there's like 20 different things or 30, every one of those is a supplier that we had to find. It took over a year and a half that could certify in writing that there are no GMOs in their ingredients. And as a result, we're not prematurely killing dogs and cats. And that, when you don't kill them young, they can live to the age that they can actually live to. But because people don't properly feed their dogs and cats, in fact, I don't know if either of you have pets. Do either of you have a pet?
I have a cat. I have a cat.
Okay. Well, we make a marvelous cat food. Okay. But in the case like with dogs, I mean, cats, you can pretty put the food out. But with dogs, most people feed their dogs twice a day. We feed every dog here a minimum of 5 or more times a day. People say, oh my gosh, why would you do that? And here's what we discovered after 28 years and 15,500 dogs in our house. We discovered that the thing that ages dogs the most, that makes their bodies wear out the fastest, believe it or not, is digestion. And, I like to use the example where if you go out to a buffet or something, you eat too much, you come home, you literally have to lie down to digest your food. Well, when you're doing that, your body is basically shutting down to everything else except digesting your food. And when you only feed an animal, a dog or a cat, once or twice or even 3 times a day, you're making their body go through that massive digestive effort and prematurely it ages them and it shortens their lifespan. We feed our animals 5 or more times a day, and we have our animals are living twice their normal lifespan consistently. And I've got right now 6 feet away from me a 25-year-old dog. Okay, she runs around just like she was a puppy. And that's the thing that people, they call me all the time, and because our phone number is right there on the website and also on our dog food bags and cat food bags. And they say, I don't understand it. I watch these videos on your website, and these animals are in their 20s running around like puppies. And my 8-year-old Rottweiler is having a problem getting up. Because you didn't care for him right, you didn't feed him right, and you didn't feed the right food. All of which we now solve. Wow.
Well, I have to switch gears because we'd be arrested if we don't ask you a Batman question.
Well, you can ask all the Batman questions you want.
I'll ask the first one. Trace can take it from there. This is kind of a weird, but when you first got the role, and ironically or coincidentally, your name is Ward, and you were the Ward of Bruce Wayne. What was your understanding of what that meant between those two men? Were you a friend?
Well,
were you, what?
Right. Well, it's kind of like, it's like being adopted. It's not a natural, father and son relationship. It's like a person's adopted, and that's really what it basically was. That was there in the 40s when they created Batman. That terminology is a little different than it is today, but it was basically that meaning. And in my case, my mother's name was Marjorie Ward. Okay, that was her last name, which her maiden name. And what happened? My last name was Gervis, spelled Gervis. Well, when you look at it, people say, "Well, I don't know how to pronounce that." So the studio came to me and said, maybe you might want to consider having a stage name. I said, "Well, I like to be myself," but I talked to my mom, and she said, "Well, why don't you take my maiden name?" So I had it legally changed to Burt Ward, and that's my legal name. And it is kind of unusual, and if you think about it, Burt Ward, which is 4 letters and 4 letters, and Adam West, which is 4, West and Ward. I mean, it was just, I don't know. And the chemistry that Adam and I had, let me tell you something. I don't know of anybody that had a chemistry. We got along so well. I met him at my screen test, and in the first 5 minutes of talking to him, the two of us started laughing. We never stopped laughing for more than 50 years.
With all the different, villains that come on the show and all that, was there ever issues with actor egos and this kind of thing, like the different actors that played?
No. Let me tell you why. We had some of the most prestigious and famous people like Cesar Romero, and there's so many great stars that they were the ultimate professional. I mean, and for me, I kind of describe it as I was like the kid in the candy store. I mean, every one of these people that came on our set every week, because we had different villains and,
Sure.
Every week. And even some of their cohorts were major stars that for me, I'd seen all these people either on television or in the movie theater. And for me, I was just thrilled. But these I got to tell you, the old stars of the past, they're the most classy people of all. I mean, it's not like today. I mean, they know their lines. They never make a mistake. There's almost like a machine. They're so perfect in what they do. And it just inspired me. It's like, now you see, I was fortunate because I have a high IQ, and I was considered the world's fastest reader at one point. I read, well, the average reader reads 240 words a minute with 40% comprehension. I was clocked by the American Medical Society of Beverly Hills at 30,000 words a minute with 90% comprehension.
Wow.
That's the equivalent of reading the entire play of Macbeth in 1 minute. And I read one piece, which is 1,442 pages. In 45 minutes, got an essay final at UCLA on it. And so for me, it also affected my memory. So I could look at my lines and I just look at them for a minute or two, and I've got them locked in. But poor Adam, they had a teleprompter for him, and he would make a mistake or two, and then I would just do my line. He says, "Burt, will you please make a few mistakes? You're making me look bad." I mean, I loved Adam. He was the greatest guy. We just had so much fun. We got along so well. And I want to tell you something about chemistry. The chemistry we had, and if you think about it, what is the most famous comic duos in history? What are the the commonalities? Well, one of them is contrast, right? Yeah. Whether it's Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello, there's usually a physical contrast. There could be a mental contrast, Ed McMahon and Johnny Carson. I mean, there was always a great contrast, and so when Adam would do his lines, and Adam envisioned himself kind of like, he kind of like, he thought himself like the prime minister, like a Winston Churchill. I mean, he really, in fact, he came to me one time, he says, Burt, that deep voice says, Burt, I finally realized what it's like to play Batman. I said, well, Adam, what are you saying? Well, he said, I just watched Charlton Heston in the 10 Commandments. And when he received from Moses the tablet, and oh my God, I can't stand it. Adam, you're nuts. But I mean, people say to me, well, what was he really like? Well, let me tell you something. He was really like he really was on the show, and yet he had the most marvelous sense of comic humor. Never have I ever seen anybody that had such a comic sense. In fact, it is kind of a kooky thing to say, but we were doing a show for a very famous production company, Filmation. And Norm Prescott, the president of the company, was talking to me one time. And he said, the one thing about Adam, he says, I'll tell you about Adam. Everything that man says has a sexual connotation. and it was the whole double meanings of what we did on the show. In other words, for the kids, it's a hero worship. For the adults, it was the nostalgia of the comic book. But for the teenagers and college kids in the 60s, they didn't want to be inside watching television. They want to be cruising, the outside restaurants, the drive-in restaurants on a Friday and Saturday night. I mean, that was the thing. Nobody watched television. But they watched Batman. Why? Because of the suggestive things we said, the suggestive way we said it, the kinds of double meanings that, are they really doing this? Are they putting me on? In fact, we say that we put on our tights to put on the world.
Well, I went to college in the 60s, and the dorm emptied out and went into the common room to watch Batman every time you were on. And it did have those overtones. Your delivery, and also, I went to Carnegie Tech, and Andy Warhol was a graduate, and of course he is responsible in great part for pop art, and you were really the first pop art television show.
Absolutely. Color had just come to television within a year or two, and our show, you talk about color. with the colorful costumes of the villains, our colorful costumes, the all of the crazy things. We know you have the villains' hideouts with a sign that says hideout. I mean, all of those things. I remember one time, watching them film a villain scene because we were going to break into this hideout, and I was watching it, and I'm watching these cameramen. I said, wait a minute, I don't mean to tell you your business, but I think your camera's, not straight. It's not correct. Oh. He says, Burt, he says, we're the top professionals. Of course we know what we're doing. I said, yeah, but don't you think you need to turn it more? No, Burt, no. Well, but you're doing this at an angle. I said, yes. So why are you doing it? Because you're the villains. I said, what's the villains got to do with turning the camera on an angle? He says, because they're crooked.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
crooked. So the angle on the villains' hideouts was always crooked. That was... Everybody on our crew got into that Batman style. That and that's what it was. It was like we said, we put on our tights to put on the world.
I'm like a 2, that 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon. I'm like 2 degrees from you, because I grew up. David Wayne, who played the Mad Hatter, I grew up with his family. I was in a band with his son for several years. Went to his house every week, and actually we'd go with his Timmy Wayne and their sisters. We'd watch Batman together, and then like when Mr. Wayne got that part as the Mad Hatter, and it was like, oh my God,
right,
like the best part he ever played for us,
let me tell you, he was really good. He did the Hat Factory. He really was hilarious. Oh my God, was he hilarious! But every week we had the greatest stars, and what an honor. I mean, I remember when Vincent Price came on the set. Well, I got to tell you, as a child, I was like 5 years old when I watched the movie The Raven.
Oh my God.
Really scary film for a 5-year-old to watch. I had nightmares from that. And I remember when he came on the set. Of course, he was playing Egghead, but he came on the set. And, I saw him at a distance, in that moment, like your heart kind of flutters and stuff. And yet, like, oh my God, that's really him. But then he was incredibly nice, and all of them, they're so professional. It just makes you feel like, God, why can't I, I really need to aspire to what these people have, come forward and laid the groundwork. I didn't realize the level of professionalism that the old stars had. I mean, it was just, it was absolutely phenomenal.
Was there ever any talk of you doing cameos in some of the recent Batman movies?
No, what's so interesting, if you take like Star Trek, where you had William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, when that series ended, Paramount started making movies. And they used them. Yeah. And who cared that they were older? You loved them. They could have been 100 years old, and you would have still loved them. Absolutely. Because of the heart to it. Yeah. But no, with Batman, no, they wanted that dark, this was a comedy. We don't want any laughter here. This is serious. We want to make the heavy duty drama. So as a result, they took it a different way. And so they would not use Adam and I, although I must tell you, years later, I was talking to the studio. I thought I had them almost convinced to bring Adam and I back and older now. Yeah, older. Sure. Can you just imagine, here it is, Gotham City, and Batman is obviously a lot older, and so is Robin. And now there's a terrible crime, and they got to have help. So they come to Batman, and he goes to his closet, and the dust billows out. He's trying to get the dust off his suit. Robin can't pull his tights up over his. I mean, you could be the funniest thing. People would be rolling, laughing, but we couldn't get him to do it.
I think it would have been fun just if they gave you a cameo like Alfred Hitchcock, but see him get off a bus.
Or you could be the mayor of Gotham or something. No,
well, you could. Yeah, that's true. Now, I did in Supergirl that came on about 2 years ago. I had they had me. I did a cameo just before the main titles, and it got a lot of people talking about it. And like filled the first 8 pages all the way up and down on the internet. The thing about what was it going to be like, and what kind of a role would he do? And I did a Dick Grayson, and it was so funny because when I was there and they filmed in Vancouver, that I didn't know this last minute. They said, "Oh, we want you to walk this dog." You know what I mean? and it's a German Shepherd. Now, I thought first, well, they probably know that I operate the world's largest giant breed dog rescue, so I'm expert handler, and maybe that's just kind of a thank you or a tribute to our Gentle Giants rescue. And but it turns out that I did a little more research, and they handed me a German Shepherd, which we don't rescue German Shepherds. We rescue 45 breeds, but that's not one of them. And I got thinking about it, I did a little research, and I found out that in the original comic book, there was a bat dog.
Really?
Okay. Yes, it was a German Shepherd. It was a bat dog, and it was, and I mean, and it was, Ace, Ace the bat dog, ACE the bat dog, and I thought, wow, that's a tribute to the original series. And then when Warner Brothers came out a couple years ago they came out with this fantastic coffee table book, 80 Years of the Boy Wonder, where they took, from the creation of every bit of, all through the years of creation, Grayson. And, there's been subsequent, Dick Grayson became Nightwing. I mean, there's all this evolvement in the comic books, the history evolves. But they came to me, and I ended up writing it's like the equivalent of the introduction to it, like 4 or 5 pages long in the book. I mean, most gorgeous coffee table book, beautiful book with all the drawings of every Robin and every comic episode, and with all the details. My God, the research, I mean, it must have taken years to do the research on that, but it was a beautiful thing. And I've done a lot of other things for Warner Brothers. With their streaming service, before the streaming service came out, they brought me in and recorded me introducing many of their shows. And I thought, well, they say, oh, well, Burt, we're going to give you a teleprompter. Well, I can memorize. No, it's a little bit more than that. They gave me equivalent of 5 or 10 pages. It took 5 minutes to read, and I don't talk slow. It took 5 minutes to read every introduction with this, and then in that year it did that, and then it evolved to this. And I've never seen an introduction of any television programming with the depth that they did on the streaming service. But, it was great because there's people that love those shows and love the comics. They love that. I mean, Warner Brothers was right on target. Every one of those introductions was designed for the fan base, and this is what really happened. And then this one evolved and stuff like that.
Phenomenal.
It was fun. It was really fun.
Any wrap-up, Trace? Do you have any last? Because we're about out of time, but
no, just to give your website another plug, gentlegiantpetproducts.com. You want your dog to live a nice, healthy life.
Well, yeah. How about like double or maybe triple? And the thing is that with no illness, I mean, I'll tell you something. Vet bills, I hate to say it, have become almost like human medical bills. Oh. It is incredibly expensive to go to a vet. I mean, and they serve a major purpose, of course, to keep animals healthy, but the thing is, you're better off, if you can avoid the problem in the first place, right? So if you keep your dogs and cats healthy and happy, you're going to save yourself astronomical amount of money. But Gentle Giants is available all across the country. We're in Target stores all across the U.S. And now we're online with, all the online companies, Petco.com, PetSmart.com, Chewy.com, TractorSupply.com, Target.com, and our own website, GentleGiantsDogFood.com. And I invite your listeners to contact us if they want to know how we do it, and go to our website, read about how we've spent 28 years developing this technology, and we give it for free. There's no charge. I mean, we sell our food at basically our cost. We don't take any salary, and all the information and the learning process. Oh my gosh. I tell people what took my wife and I 25 years of our life to learn, you can read about it on our website and learn it in less than 25 minutes. That's productive.
Well, we can't thank you enough, and for all you've done to vitalize the culture in the 60s and 70s, and of course now with your pets, I'm definitely going to get some for my cat. Thank you so much, Burt.
Well, thank you, citizen. And as we said on Batman, to the Batmobile, citizen.
Great. Take care.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.